for Whole Foods for most of his adult life. He loves his job, and that has a lot to do with the fact that he feels good about the Whole Foods mission.
The number one core value of Whole Foods Market is to sell the highest quality natural and organic food possible. Every store at Whole Foods Market is different, and every store has a feel. You could blindfold me and take me into a Whole Foods Market anywhere in the country, and I would know I was in a Whole Foods if I didn't see any signs, because I would know it by the feel.
Whole Foods sells mostly organic groceries with an emphasis on fresh produce. Their commitment to sustainable agriculture, collaboration with suppliers, and community wellness makes them a premium brand that costs a little more than their big box competitors. But maintaining high quality and great value for their customers without compromising their core values is the true secret to their success. Cost Volume Profit Analysis, CVP, is the study of the effects of changes in costs and volume on a company's profit. It is important to profit planning, determining product mix, maximizing use of production facilities, setting selling prices, and is often reported in a CVP income statement format for internal use. The income statement classifies costs as variable or fixed and computes a contribution margin, the amount of revenue remaining after deducting variable costs. Let's start by reviewing some basics about CVP analysis, specifically break-even analysis, target net income, and margin of safety. For sake of simplicity, let's assume you are selling just one product, tomatoes, at a farmer's market. The break-even point can be computed by taking fixed costs and dividing by the contribution margin, sales minus variable expenses. Contribution margin can also be expressed in the form of the contribution margin ratio, contribution margin divided by sales, providing the break-even point in dollars versus units. When a company is in its early stages of operation, the primary goal is to break even. Failure to do so will lead to financial failure. Once you've determined the break-even point, you'll want to set a sales goal that will generate a target net income. This will provide you with required sales in either units or dollars, depending on whether you use a contribution margin per unit or a contribution margin ratio. Finally, the margin of safety indicates how much sales can decline before you are operating at a loss, and again, can be expressed in dollar terms or as a percentage. Okay, that seems easy enough. Now let's get back to Whole Foods, where things are slightly more complicated because Whole Foods doesn't just sell tomatoes. They sell thousands of different products with different costs that fluctuate constantly under a variety of market pressures such as the weather, competition, and transportation costs.
Produce could be higher because of lower freight costs in one area, and in another area it could have a lower margin on it. What you have to do is you have to blend your margin across the full spectrum of product.
Whole Foods starts by determining their sales mix, the relative percentage in which they sell their multiple products. Sales mix is important to managers because different products often have substantially different contribution margins. Managers can compute break-even sales for a mix of two or more products by determining the weighted average unit contribution margin of all the products. However, to avoid having to calculate thousands of different unit contribution margins, they calculate the break-even point in terms of sales dollars rather than units sold, using sales information for divisions or product lines. Also, they must compute the contribution margin ratio rather than contribution margin per unit. Ultimately, information such as this, provided using CVP analysis, can help managers better understand the impact of sales mix on profitability. Price fluctuations are one thing, but what happens when fluctuations strike whole nations and industries? During the recent recession, Whole Foods managed to actually maintain profitability despite opening 16 new stores. They did this by reducing certain premium prices and by reducing the size of each new store, allowing for savings in other areas.
And we are moving in a direction of what we call right-sizing stores. And the savings from that is that the rent, obvious, utilities, and fewer team members would be needed to staff a store.
Companies that have higher fixed costs relative to variable costs have higher degrees of operating leverage. Operating leverage is calculated as the contribution margin divided by the net income. When a company's sales revenues are increasing, high operating leverage can mean that profits will increase rapidly. However, when sales are declining, too much operating leverage can have quite devastating effects on a company. By working with suppliers and streamlining store space to control costs, lower overhead gives Whole Foods a way to lower operating leverage. This, coupled with an increased margin of safety or cushion during troubled times, allows Whole Foods to continue as a competitive alternative for health-conscious grocery shoppers.